Welcome to True Echo, where powerful voices and untold truths come to life. Today's story is more than just an awkward exchange in a high-end restaurant. It's about the quiet strength of a black waitress who faced arrogance head-on, and left a powerful CEO speechless. If you've ever been underestimated or had to prove your worth twice just to be seen, this story is for you. Stick around, it only gets better. The lunch rush hit early that Thursday. Sunlight streamed into Harvest Row, a glass-fronted luxury restaurant tucked between steel towers in Chicago's River North District. It wasn't the kind of place where people stumbled in off the street. It was the kind of place where power lunchers and investors brokered deals with a $65 Pinot Noir on the table and a contract in their pocket. Maya Greene weaved through the dining room with ease. At 30, she knew how to move without drawing attention. She wore a clean uniform, black apron high, white blouse crisp, her natural hair pulled back in a tight puff. She was invisible, and she'd learned that invisibility made her job easier. No extra questions. No assumptions about her being in charge when a mistake was made. But there were still little jabs. A man at table 5 shoved his glass into her hand like she was a machine. A woman at table 2 asked if she even knew what burrata was. Maya simply nodded and went on. She'd learned that composure was currency here. Then came Richard Whitmore. The man entered like he expected applause. Late 50s, silver hair, custom suit that probably cost more than Maya made in 2 months. No umbrella, no coat, just his phone in hand and a kind of arrogant smirk that said, "I own the room." The maitre d' rushed up, all smiles and gestures. "Mr. Whitmore, your table is ready." Of course, it was in Maya's section. Table 9. She approached with the menu, the corners of her mouth lifting into a soft smile. "Good afternoon. My name is..." "Make sure mine's gluten-free," Richard cut in, not even looking up. "And I don't trust kitchens unless I see them sweat." "Understood, sir," Maya replied smoothly. "The chef uses tamari in the marinade. No wheat." That earned her a glance. Just long enough for him to silently weigh whether she was bluffing. Maya didn't flinch. She moved on with the orders. The French woman asked about the salmon. "Farmed or wild?" "Farmed," Maya said, then added in French, "Would you like me to double-check?" The woman's expression brightened, pleased to be met in her native tongue. But Richard leaned back, loud enough for other tables to hear. "Look at you. Pas les sous waitresses." The others at the table chuckled. Maya didn't. She met his gaze, calm. "Yes, I speak French, sir." That shifted the air just a bit. One of the younger men at the table now studied his water glass like it held answers. Maya didn't break stride. She went to the kitchen, input the orders. But something in her chest was tight. This man. This day. It felt different. And it was only just beginning. The drinks came out quickly. Maya delivered each one with calm precision. Sparkling water, iced tea, no lemon, and ginger beer for the Frenchwoman, who thanked her with a soft smile and a compliment in French. Before Maya could step away, the woman stopped her to ask a question, in French again, about the wine list and the sourcing of their white ale. Maya didn't hesitate. "Oui, madame," she said fluently. "Le salmon est péché en neige, et le brewer blanc est en bouteille à Colmar." The woman looked delighted. "Merci. C'est rare de pouvoir parler français ici." Maya nodded and turned to leave. But Richard wasn't finished. "Whoa now," he said, voice raised, eyes gleaming. "Multilingual and all. Didn't expect that from someone carrying trays." The table stiffened. The two men shifted uncomfortably. The woman looked down. Maya turned, expression unreadable. "It's part of the job, sir. We serve guests from all over." That only fueled him. "Well, if you're so smart," he sneered, "why don't you translate this?" Then he spewed a mangled sentence in broken German, fast, harsh, deliberately provocative. The table went still. Maya didn't flinch. In German, sir, she said, voice calm. Would you like the literal translation or the one you meant to say? He smirked. Whichever makes you sound smarter. Maya didn't blink. You said, der Verstand ist wie ein Fallschirm, funktioniert, wenn offen ist. That means, the mind is like a parachute, it only works when it's open. But you misused the informal structure and got the noun wrong. It should be, der Geist funktioniert wie ein Fallschirm, wenn offen ist. The Frenchwoman raised an eyebrow. She's right. I studied in Berlin. No one uses Verstand like that. Sounds like Oktoberfest bar talk. The younger man choked back laughter. Richard's smirk faded. Somebody's memorized a few quotes, he mumbled. Maya didn't move. I don't use Google Translate. I studied linguistics and international relations, for languages, 1 degree, and 2 jobs to keep my brothers in school. But yes, today I'm your server. That landed like a slap. She turned to leave. But Richard couldn't let go. Cute trick, he called after her. I'm sure it gets you tips. Maya turned back. I'm not here for tricks, sir. I'm here to do my job well. You should try it sometime. Then she left, the weight of the moment still vibrating at the table. The kitchen was warm, humming with the coordinated rhythm of chefs and line cooks moving in sync. But Maya felt detached, as if her body operated separately from her mind. She placed the drink tray back in the rack, straightened her apron, and sipped from her water glass. Lucille, the head chef, caught her eye from across the pass. Trouble at 9? Lucille asked without looking up from the risotto she was plating. Not trouble. Just, someone who needs an audience to feel smart, Maya replied. Lucille nodded, unfazed. Let the food do the talking. Maya smiled slightly. That was Lucille's answer to everything. But even as she watched the line staff plate orders with polished efficiency, her thoughts kept circling back to Richard Whitmore. She'd worked in this industry long enough to know the type, the kind of man who didn't see people like her until she disrupted his worldview. That wasn't new. What was new was how far he pushed, even after being corrected. The dishes for table 9 were ready. Maya adjusted her grip, balancing the plates with practiced elegance, and stepped back into the dining room. The atmosphere hadn't changed much, the background music still played at a soft jazz hum, conversations buzzed like bees behind glass, but the staff had noticed. Jared at the bar glanced her way, his posture alert. Janine at the host's stand wasn't pretending to fold menus anymore. Even Troy had moved out of the office to stand where he had a clear view of table 9. Maya approached the table without hesitation. Salmon for you, madam, she said gently, placing the plate before the Frenchwoman. Grilled lamb, duck confit, and the sea bass. Quinoa crusted, tamari glaze. She turned to walk away, but once again, Richard couldn't let it rest. You know, he said, louder this time, as if daring her to answer. It's always the ones who think they're smarter than they are who end up in aprons. The comment hung in the air like cigarette smoke, clinging to every ear within range. Maya stopped. She didn't spin around. She turned slowly, folding her hands in front of her apron and meeting his eyes without a hint of emotion. I'm sorry, sir, she said quietly. Could you repeat that? He leaned forward, fork in hand, smirk curling back into place. You heard me. Degrees are cute, but this isn't a seminar. It's a restaurant. You're not here to educate anyone, you're here to serve. Maya didn't react, not on the outside. Inside, her heart beat with a steady, aching thud. She wasn't angry. She wasn't humiliated. She was calculating. The silence at the table was heavier now. No one laughed. The VP looked down, chewing slowly. The younger man pushed food around his plate without eating. The French woman set her fork down entirely. Maya's voice didn't rise. It didn't waver. "I treat every guest with respect," she said calmly. "But that doesn't mean I forget who I am just because I'm holding a tray." Richard gave a short, bitter laugh. "Yeah. And who are you?" Maya inhaled slowly. "I'm someone who didn't get to coast. I'm someone who finished school early, speaks 4 languages, and works 10-hour shifts to keep her family afloat. I'm someone who wakes up every morning with responsibilities most people wouldn't understand. That's who I am." For the first time, Richard had no comeback. The younger man opened his mouth but said nothing. The woman in the blazer looked at Maya with something new in her eyes, respect, maybe even admiration. Maya was about to turn when Troy stepped forward from the host's stand, breaking the tension like a blade through cloth. "Is everything all right here?" he asked. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Richard hesitated. The mask had slipped, and now he scrambled to reassemble it. "Just a difference in perspective, that's all." Troy didn't move. "We don't allow disrespect on our floor," he said, "not to staff, not to guests." Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. The air had shifted, and everyone in the restaurant knew it. She nodded once, turned on her heel, and walked back to the kitchen, her steps composed and quiet. But this time, everyone saw her. Not just as a server. Not just as a background character in their lunch hour. They saw Maya. They saw a woman who carried her truth like armor. A woman who knew the weight of her words and spoke them anyway. And at table 9, Richard Whitmore, who entered the restaurant like he owned the room, was suddenly just another man sitting in silence, realizing he no longer did. The stainless steel door swung shut behind Maya as she stepped into the back hallway. She walked past the prep station, past the kitchen where Lucille called out timing like a conductor, and didn't stop until she reached the small supply room near the employee lockers. Inside, the light buzzed faintly above her. For just 10 seconds, Maya stood still, back pressed gently to the wall, fingers curled around the doorframe. Her jaw unclenched, and she let out a long, quiet breath. She wasn't crying. She wasn't breaking. But she needed a moment. A space without an audience. A space where she didn't have to be graceful or composed or stronger than anyone else. Just her. Just Maya. Out in the dining room, the restaurant carried on like nothing had happened. Silverware clinked against porcelain. Soft jazz hummed under the buzz of conversation. Yet a subtle current had changed the tide. Table 9, the once booming center of attention, had gone quiet. Richard Whitmore sat still, his hands folded loosely on the table, gaze flicking between his untouched sea base and the hallway where Maya had disappeared. No one spoke. No one dared to. Finally, the Frenchwoman broke the silence. Her voice was even, but not warm. "You know," she said, "I came here thinking we'd discuss strategy and client alignment. I didn't realize we were practicing boardroom domination by humiliating service staff." Richard didn't look up. The VP cleared his throat and shifted in his chair. The younger man across the table pushed his food aside and leaned back, arms crossed. "I wasn't trying to humiliate her," Richard muttered finally. "But you did," the woman replied simply. He looked up then, his voice lower now, like he was trying to course-correct without admitting fault. He paused, groping for an excuse, "I'm used to rooms where if you don't assert yourself, you get steamrolled. That's the game." "So the waitress is part of your game now?" she asked, arching an eyebrow. He had no answer. Because there wasn't one that didn't make him sound even smaller. Across the restaurant, Troy returned to the host's stand, calm but watching. He didn't have to say another word. His presence was enough. He'd shown everyone, staff and customers alike, that the space had boundaries. And Maya was one of them. Back in the hallway, Maya adjusted her apron and gave herself one last glance in the smudged mirror beside the lockers. No tear streaks. No trembling hands. Just a woman ready to finish her shift. She stepped back into the main room. And this time, people noticed. Not just the customers, though heads did turn, subtle glances from table 2, a long look from the older couple at 10, but also the staff. Jared nodded to her from behind the bar. Janine gave her a half-smile. Even Raoul, who rarely looked up from the espresso machine, gave her a single, solemn nod. Maya moved with the same quiet efficiency she always had. Checked on drinks. Refilled water. Smiled where it mattered. But when she finally returned to table 9, it was different. She wasn't invisible anymore. She placed the check gently near Richard's untouched plate. "Whenever you're ready," she said, voice calm and composed. Richard reached for the checkbook, but paused. His eyes lifted to hers. "Maya, right?" he asked. She didn't answer right away. Just a slight nod. He hesitated, then spoke, quieter than before. "I didn't mean to, well. I didn't handle that well." Maya didn't react. No smile. No nod. No easy out. "I've spent years walking into rooms and talking louder than everyone else. It's how I learned to survive. To win. And sometimes I forget not everyone plays by that rulebook." She stayed silent. He searched her eyes. "You were right. I didn't expect someone like you to push back." Her voice, when it came, was soft but firm. "You didn't expect someone like me to speak at all." He exhaled, the sound almost embarrassed. "Yeah." There was no victory in Maya's expression. No triumph. Just truth. "You've worked for what you have," he said. "That's obvious now." She didn't blink. "That was always obvious. You just chose not to see it." The table was still. The younger man's throat bobbed as he swallowed. The Frenchwoman looked down, then back up at Maya with a quiet kind of respect. Richard nodded slowly, more to himself than to her. Then he reached for his wallet, signed the check, and slipped his company card inside. But before handing it back, he paused again. "I'm not good at apologies," he admitted. "But if it means anything, your brothers. They're lucky. They've got someone who doesn't let the world define her." Maya looked at him, not unkindly, but not indulgently either. "They'll understand that one day," she said simply. Then she walked away. And this time, Richard didn't watch her go out of curiosity or judgment. He watched because he knew he'd been changed. Not by force. But by truth. The sun was beginning its descent behind the steel skyline of Chicago when Maya untied her apron. The late afternoon glow poured across the restaurant's front windows, casting warm amber shadows on the floor. The lunch crowd had faded into the quieter rhythm of early dinner. Conversations were softer now. Laughter was less forced. The clatter of plates had calmed to a muted ballet. Back in the kitchen, Maya moved without rush. She wiped down her section, double-checked side stations, and nodded to Raoul at the espresso counter. "You good?" he asked, gesturing toward the front. She nodded. "Just a long day." He didn't press. He knew. By the lockers, she folded her apron into a neat square, tucking her notepad beside it. Her backpack was already zipped. She tugged her hoodie over her blouse and paused, half-dressed, half-drained, half-thinking. She didn't replay the exchange with Richard in her head. Not word for word. Not like she used to when someone crossed a line. This time, she felt steady. She had said what she needed to say. Not for drama. Not for claps. Just for truth. She was stepping out of the hallway when Troy called from the office window above the kitchen. "Maya, got a sec?" She groaned playfully. "If this is about me covering Friday, I swear I'll fake a family emergency. Troy smirked and shook his head. Not about Friday. Come on up. Curious now, she climbed the stairs to the cramped office above the kitchen. Inside was the usual clutter, schedules pinned to cork boards, receipts poking from folders, a small espresso cup next to a half-finished bagel from 6 hours ago. Troy handed her a tablet without speaking. On the screen was an email. It had come through the general reservation inbox less than 20 minutes ago. The subject line was short, today. Maya read it in silence. I don't know what I walked into that made me feel like I had to be the loudest voice in the room. I know I spoke from a place of arrogance. What I saw in Maya was someone with poise and clarity I wasn't prepared for. And that forced me to look at myself in ways I didn't expect. Please thank her for her grace. If she's ever interested in working with international clients, tell her she has my full recommendation. Richard Whitmore. She stared at the screen. Then read it again. No apology in bold letters. No groveling. But honest enough. Honest enough to know that something shifted. She didn't smile. She didn't scoff. She let the words land, soft and surprising. Troy leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. You thinking about it? She didn't answer right away. The room was quiet except for the faint thump of footsteps from the dining floor below. Finally, she handed the tablet back. I'm thinking it's wild who pays attention, and who doesn't. Troy nodded. Yeah. Some people see you once and they get it. Some people need a whole damn lesson. I wasn't doing it for him, she said plainly. I know, Troy replied. That's why it mattered. She reached for her bag. Ready to call it a day. But before she could open the door, Troy added, more carefully this time. You know, we've been talking about floor leads for weekends. Someone steady. Someone who can keep things calm when I'm not around. Train new staff. Handle the close. Maya turned slowly. Her expression was unreadable. If you're interested, Troy said, it's yours. She blinked. You serious? As serious as a man can be who still owes the linen guy 3 emails and a case of Malbec, he chuckled. You've earned it, Maya. Everyone saw it today. Not just how you handled him, how you handled yourself. She didn't say yes. Not yet. But something shifted in her chest. Not pride. Not vindication. Just recognition. Quiet. Overdue. Real. She nodded once. I'll think about it. Take your time, Troy said. And he meant it. By the time Maya walked outside, the streets had begun to cool. Spring wind moved between buildings, brushing against her cheeks. She zipped up her hoodie, tucked her hands in her pockets, and stepped toward the train station, the sidewalks quieter now. The noise of the day had faded. But the lesson lingered. She didn't walk faster. She didn't drag her feet. She moved with presence. With purpose. She hadn't just survived a moment, she'd claimed it. The Blue Line train hummed beneath her feet as Maya leaned against the window, her reflection framed in the dusk-lit glass. City lights flickered past in blurs of gold and steel, a quiet pulse running through Chicago's veins. She rested her head lightly against the cool glass, eyes focused, but not seeing. Her mind drifted, not to Richard or the restaurant, not even to Troy's offer, but to her brothers. To Devin and Marcus. Devin, her youngest, had just turned 16. Maya remembered teaching him to read at the kitchen table when their mother worked the night shift and their dad was still, well, when he was still around. Marcus, the middle one, was trying to finish his first semester at a community college. She was the reason they had both made it this far. The jobs she took, the hours she clocked, the rent she covered. And tonight, she didn't feel tired from that weight. She felt something else, like it had all meant something. She stepped off the train at Western Avenue and walked the few blocks to their apartment building. The bricks were chipped, and the hallway smelled like steamed rice and old carpet cleaner, but it was home. Home because she had made it one. When she unlocked the door, the lights inside were dim. The TV flickered silently in the living room. On the couch, Devon was asleep, a history textbook on his chest and a pencil still in his hand. His sneakers were half on, one arm dangling off the side like he'd been studying until sleep caught him mid-sentence. The kitchen, as usual, was chaos. Marcus had apparently attempted dinner. A half-scorched pot of tomato sauce sat on the stove beside a suspiciously empty container of pasta. A plate of garlic bread, clearly store-bought, rested beside it like a peace offering. Maya didn't sigh. She didn't even frown. She just smiled to herself and flicked off the burner. She poured a glass of water, leaned against the counter, and let the silence settle. For once, she didn't feel the need to fix anything. Not the kitchen, not the burnt dinner, not her little brother's drooling nap on the couch. It was all okay. Everything didn't need her control, it just needed her presence. That's when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello. Ms. Greene. The voice on the other end was calm, polished, definitely not a telemarketer. This is Aaron Klein from WCP Capital. I believe you met with Richard Whitmore earlier today. Maya straightened slightly. Met with? I was his server. Yes, of course, Aaron said without skipping a beat. Well, Mr. Whitmore, he doesn't usually follow up about restaurants. But he did this time. He said you made an impression. Maya wasn't sure how to respond. I manage the firm's philanthropic mentorship program, Aaron continued. Richard mentioned that you studied international relations and linguistics. That you're fluent in multiple languages. That you're grounded. Maya narrowed her eyes slightly. That's one way to describe me. Aaron laughed softly. Look, I'll be straight with you. We've been developing a pilot program, pairing young professionals from underrepresented backgrounds with firms that need language and cross-cultural consultants. You wouldn't be fetching coffee. You'd be consulting. Sitting in on strategy calls. It's part-time. Paid. And you can keep your job if you want. We just want to talk. For a moment, Maya didn't say anything. Then, slowly, she replied. You realize you're calling me based on a 2-minute conversation I had while carrying a tray. I'm calling, Aaron said, because someone who's built their own resilience, who keeps their composure while being underestimated, is exactly who I want advising our team on how not to embarrass themselves internationally. Maya couldn't help it. She let out a low laugh. Fair enough. I'll send over the details, Aaron said. No pressure. Just think about it. As Maya hung up, she stood motionless for a long second. Not from shock. But from clarity. Richard's moment of arrogance had rippled further than he, or she, could have imagined. And now, the very thing he mocked was the thing opening a new door. The truth she had spoken at table 9 had echoed out beyond those 4 seats. Not because she shouted. But because she stood firm. She looked over at Devon on the couch, mumbling something in his sleep about the Articles of Confederation, and smiled. Let them keep underestimating her. Every time they did, they just helped her move forward. Saturday morning sunlight filtered through the worn blinds in Maya's bedroom, casting golden stripes across the faded bookshelf filled with old college textbooks and journals. She sat cross-legged on her bed, laptop balanced on her knees, fingers hovering over the keyboard. The email from Aaron Klein at WCP Capital blinked up at her. Subject, Consulting Fellowship Opportunity, Your Voice Matters. It wasn't the subject line that gave her pause. It was the subtext. Your voice. For so long, Maya had learned to withhold hers. To be efficient. Polite. Professional. To answer disrespect with silence and wear composure like armor. But this week, she hadn't stayed silent. She hadn't let Richard Whitmore walk away believing the worst thing about her was the tray in her hand. She'd spoken up not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been told they weren't supposed to know something, say something, be something. And now, someone had heard her. Really heard her. Down the hall, Marcus was singing loudly and off-key in the shower. Devon's video game menu music echoed faintly from the living room. The apartment smelled like cinnamon toast and burnt coffee, chaotic, loud, imperfect, and alive. She looked back at the email. She clicked reply. Aaron. Thank you for reaching out. I'd like to learn more about the program. Best. Maya Greene. The moment she hit send, she didn't feel nervous. She felt steady. Back at Harvest Row, Sunday brunch buzzed with the usual chaos, families crowding booths, avocado toast orders flying, coffee pots refilled every 90 seconds. Troy stood behind the host's stand, watching the floor. Jared was at the bar. Janine was seating a table near the windows. And Maya? She wasn't just walking the floor anymore. She was leading it. Clipboard in hand, earpiece tucked discreetly behind her ear, she checked rotation logs and coached a nervous new hire through taking their first order. Her presence commanded quiet respect. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. When Richard Whitmore's name came up again on a future reservation, a small lunch for visiting investors, Troy asked her privately, "Want me to assign it to someone else?" Maya considered it. Then smiled. "No need," she said. "I know how to handle people like him." And she did. Not with revenge. Not with venom. With clarity. With language. Precision. Composure. That evening, as the restaurant began to slow, a small envelope was left at the host's stand with Maya's name on it. Inside was a handwritten note. Maya. I said I wasn't good at apologies. I meant it. But here's what I didn't say, I learned something. You held up a mirror I didn't know I needed. I didn't like what I saw, but I'm trying to fix it. I hope one day I can work with people like you, not just be served by them. R.W. She folded the note and tucked it into her backpack without a word. Maybe it didn't matter. Or maybe it did. Either way, it wasn't hers to carry. Later that night, Maya stood at the small kitchen window, sipping tea and watching the glow of the city stretch toward the lake. The skyline shimmered under the moonlight, just like it had every other night. But tonight, it looked different. Not because the buildings had changed. But because she had. And she hadn't needed to shout to make it happen. She had spoken. And they had listened. Even the ones who thought they never would. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey of quiet courage and unexpected transformation. Maya's story reminds us, you don't have to raise your voice to raise the standard, sometimes truth delivered with clarity is the loudest sound in the room. As one quiet moment showed us, dignity is not given, it's claimed. If you're so smart, translate it. He mocked her. She translated not just the words. She translated the moment. And it changed everything. If this story moved you, share it with someone who's been underestimated. Let us know in the comments how you use your voice. And don't forget to subscribe to True Echo, where every story has a heartbeat worth hearing.